Alright, hey guys, so on the 25th, so today's Sunday, in 6 days, I have a drift event at Club Loose Englishtown, and so I'm going to show you what I need to do to my car in order to get it prepped, and how your car should be prepped for an event as well. Alright, so for tech inspection, they do check under your hood. I'm just going to start here, make it a little bit simple. What they're going to check is if all your fuel lines are stock and OEM, so mine are, so they just asked me, oh, it's a stock? Yes. They're also going to check if your intake is loose. Now, this is something that I need to fix. I have zip ties, which I hold it to the bracket on my cruise control, my nice hot air intake. So that's all I need to do in the engine bay. I don't have any leaks. If you're leaking fluids, they will check and fail tech, because just ruin it for everyone. And then you got to make sure your coolant levels nice and topped off. Mine's full. I did a coolant flush recently, so it's fine. You gotta also make sure your oil level is good. So I pull that out. So there's a couple things I need from the shop. I do need a bit more oil, so I'm just gonna grab a couple quarts, top that off a bit, and then bring some with me just in case I burn some. But my engine doesn't really burn too much oil, if any, so I always good to keep things topped up. But apart from that, if your engine bay is mostly stock, you're good to go. And last thing though, then you have to have a heat shield between your exhaust headers and your brake master if they're on the same side. So that's one thing you want to really make sure you have. If not, various companies for different model cars sell heat shields for that purpose. If your brake master is on the other side of your exhaust header, say your header's on this side or at the front, if you're on certain transverse engine setups, then you'll be fine. But yeah, I always pass for especially engine bay stuff. They don't really care as long as it's stock and ready to go. Alright, so I'm going to finish tightening these up, and then I'll go through every last thing you'll need to know before you go to your first drift event. With cages and harnesses, there's only a few different setups Club Loose will allow. So with my personal setup, I have a 4-point RaceQuip harness. The harness does have to be SFI rated. And you have to have a minimum of a 4-point. I do have a 5th point available for it, and my PCI mounts do have a 5th point attachment, but it's not needed. I haven't had any issues. I haven't experienced any submarining or anything like that, so yeah, so exactly. Like, I'm not gonna go off course at 30 miles an hour and my legs go up my spine or whatever people say. So whatever, 4-point, I pass tech every time. Just gotta make sure it's a nice, good, quality rated harness. So also, you don't need an airbag. Personally, if you had a stock setup on your car and it had a stock airbag, I would disconnect it, because if you run off course and your airbag blows up in your face because you dive down into a ditch, yeah, it's funny, you can have a shit day. So if you don't want to go an aftermarket wheel route, I personally do. This is a 350 mil. It's really good for running through your hands and nice and grippy. So make sure you disconnect that airbag, because that sounds awful. For mounting the harness, you have to use stock mounting locations. So the Miata has the stock 3-point mount down here and back here for the clicker buckle. So I used those for my lap belts. For the shoulder belts, you really have to make sure that they're wrapped the correct and safe way. So obviously you have to have an SFI rated harness, but there's a certain way they are wrapped around the back. Your RaceQuip, your Takata, or G-Force, whatever, they will come with instructions with how to wrap them. So you want to really make sure you're covered like with that. Now, if you have a cage, mine isn't an A-class spec cage. An A-class spec cage needs to go down the dash, and it has to have the full door bars, but you have to have padding. So I have padding, which I put down here. Anywhere where your head could come into contact while you're wearing a helmet has to be padded. So up here I have padding, and I put padding up here as well. And just for symmetry reasons, I'll put padding right here behind me. So, and then the last thing about the interior that I can think about is your e-brake. So right here I got this off eBay actually. It's a button that you can push in and out. So when it's out, your e-brake ratchets, but when it's in, you can pull it. So that ensures when you can enter, you can pull it and then keep going without being like, oh no, it's stuck up, and then you just look like a weenie. So, onto a couple more things. To extend on the seat and harness, your seat does not have to be FIA rated. Personally, I recommend it. The Sparco Sprint is a very affordable option. Obviously not as affordable as some like eBay bride reps or anything like that, but it's worth, I don't skimp on safety, it's not worth it. If you have a completely stock setup, so OEM seat belt, you're good to go, you'll be fine. If you have an aftermarket seat, you can run an OEM seat belt, but it must run through the holes that are on the seats, so the lap belt and the shoulder belt. On the aftermarket seat, a stock seat belt is allowed to do that. You are not allowed to run a harness on a stock seat. It's dangerous. There's no holes on it for your shoulders. If you have, I mean, I guess like the Evo 10 has seats stock that have the holes in them. I guess Evo 10 seats would work, but you cannot run a seat like this because the harness will it's just dangerous, don't do it. All right, so this is the empty space I've created. I'm gonna put some ties in here, and then my tools are either gonna go footwell, trunk, or behind my cage back here. So all I need to do now is reinstall my fire extinguisher and make sure there's nothing loose in here. I'll do that right before the event because I might have to put some stuff back in. For all these random wrenches, nuts and bolts and everything. Got to make sure those are gone.
So you can't have anything loose?
Nothing.
Why is it called Club Loose?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Two big things Club Loose will check is your wheel bearings. So a way to check those, the way they do it, they grab your wheels and they give them a good shake. If there's any clunking or any play in your bearing, that's potentially dangerous, it could break. So they'll fail you for tech. Also, you need to have every single lug nut, and if they're loose and they shake, obviously they'll tell you to go back. So if you have a missing stud or anything like that, replace that before you go. You don't want to make it all the way out there just to be told you can't brace. Another big thing is the battery. So even if you have any event anywhere, and you have the most relaxed tech inspector at an autocross, drift event, or anything like that, everyone checks your battery. It is a potential fire hazard. So if you come back here, this is where a Miata battery is located. Probably knew that. You have to have an OEM tie down or a tie down that's from a reputable brand. You can't have just zip ties, you can't have bungee cords. So my battery is super snug. I've been yelled at a couple times for having a little play, so I bought a new battery so I never have to take it out, and I cranked it down. Now also, don't have anything loose in your trunk as well. Funny enough, I have a bunch of zip ties, I'm just gonna take those out. You don't want stuff flying around, and they actually dent your quarter panels on the outside if you do have stuff flying around. Just a couple other things. When you get there, obviously prepay before you go, otherwise you'll be charged more. You have to wear long trousers. So what I'm wearing right now would be perfectly acceptable at Club Loose. You can wear a t-shirt, it cannot be a tank top, so it has to have a sleeve. You have to have trousers on and closed-toe shoes and a helmet. So this helmet it has to be a Snell rated 2010 or 2015 helmet. It's a couple $100, so it's more expensive safety equipment you'll have to run, but it's worthwhile in the long run. Almost every track will require it. Autocrosses require it. Drift events, track nights, SCCA, NASA, everyone needs a Snell helmet. So without a question, just buy one of those. It's worth having. So tools you should bring are a jack stands, some way of taking off your lug nuts. So you can have a cordless impact, that's what I use. If you don't have that, use a tire iron or a socket, whatever you need. Also bring any sockets, so standard like 8, 10, 12, 14 mil, stuff your car usually will have. Pliers, scissors, zip ties, cloths, anything small you can just stuff into a toolbox so it can fit in your car, but you won't be stranded with that.